Hey guys, my name is Justin and I'm here to share with you guys the three things that really stood out to me while reading A Tale of Three Kings. First and foremost, the main point that I saw was honoring God. In 1 Corinthians 10:31 it says, "Whether then you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God." I really feel like these 3 points that I'm going to talk about, David really portrayed throughout his life becoming king. The first point is patience, honoring God through patience. Romans 12:12 says, "Rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, and be constant in prayer." David was anointed king, but he still tended to the sheep. David was anointed king, but he still became a messenger boy for his brothers. David was anointed king, but he still went and served King Saul in the palace. I call this kind of the process of obedience. Through all these interactions, David was given the opportunity to worship God and praise Him. And in the book it talks about how he brought a guitar-like instrument and a sling with him every time he went and tended the sheep. And through those down times of tending the sheep, he would worship God and praise Him through everything. In 2 Samuel 5:4-5, David was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 40 years. What I got from this is that his time of patience didn't even measure up to the blessing that God had given him. Although he waited for 30 years from the time he was born to become king, he also reigned for 40 years through that promise that God had fulfilled in him. My second point is perspective, honoring God's perspective. 2 Timothy 2:21 says, "Therefore, if anyone cleanses himself from what is dishonorable, he will be a vessel for honorable use, set apart as holy, ready for every good work." Chapter 6 really talks about how King Saul was throwing spears at David. And society around David was telling him to throw the spears back. It's your opportunity to overthrow the king, to get back at him for attacking you for no reason, essentially. And it's kind of like the way that I was raised. My parents always raised me that if we ever get in a fight, that we need to fight back. That it's you have to defend your honor, you have to defend your name. That it's only right to fight somebody who is trying to fight you. But David does something really weird and twisted that wasn't a part of the norm, and he turned the other cheek. He did not attack Saul. He didn't even kill Saul in the cave when he had the perfect opportunity. But he honored God's perspective by turning the other cheek, by hiding in caves, by going away for a little while. The third point is promise, honoring God's promise. In Galatians 6:9, it says, "And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap, if we do not give up." David was anointed king, but he still put his faith and his hope in God and His promise. When he fought the bear, he put his faith and his hope in God's promise. When he fought the lion, he put his faith and his hope in God's promise. When he was tending sheep, he put his faith and his hope in God's promise. When he was a messenger boy, when he killed Goliath, when he was being hunted by Saul, he put his faith and his hope in God's promise. Our promises are not always fulfilled immediately, and in today's society, we constantly want an immediate result with everything that we do. If we know that God promised us when we were 17 that we were going to be a worship pastor, or that we were going to be a pastor of church, or that we were going to be the greatest businessman or woman to ever walk the face of this earth, we want that when we're 19. We don't want to wait until we're 28, 30, 40, but God's promises will always be fulfilled. If you are promised something by God, put your faith and hope in God that His promise will be fulfilled. David remained faithful from every attack, from every battle, through Goliath, from being hunted by King Saul, but in return that ultimately killed the inner Saul in him. And if he didn't put his faith and hope in God's promise, then he would have ultimately turned into King Saul the second. But one thing that really stood out is remain persistent in the promise rather than the present. Thank you guys.